Mm. Hi, all y'all. I've had a couple requests to talk about a rather significant experience in my life. It was a turning point, a watershed moment that changed the course of my history, the direction of where my life was headed at the time into an entirely unknown, uncharted, completely brand new experience for me. So let me set you up a little bit with the background. So, at the time when this experience happened, I was married to my first husband. It was a 25-year marriage in total, and this was about 16 years in. I was 42 years of age. I had 7 of my eventual 8 children. I was a clergy wife. My ex-husband was a pastor, and we were very active within the church. It was a denomination that was evangelical, liturgical, and charismatic. It was also misogynistic, but that was not put on the church bulletin or the marquee. Yeah, but it was. It definitely was. I had been a Christian since the age of 15, and I was a sold out believer. I was born again, spirit filled, altar altered, washed in the blood, sanctified, heaven bound. I don't even know what other qualifications to give you, but I was the real deal. I was I was a real believer. In fact, there are places still on the internet where you can find evidence of former me arguing and debating with people like now me and imagining that I was winning. I was rather tenacious at my apologetics, which is pretty much the defense of the one true faith as we all believed was the case. Yep. It was my world. It was my everything. My entire community was my small Christian church in Fairfax, Virginia, in the outskirts, the suburbs of Washington, D.C. We'd lived there for 21 years at the time. I had, and I believed I would go the rest of my life within that institution, that faith, that construct. But it seems there was something within me. I now recognize it as my soul, my my truth, my inner wisdom, my North Star, that had a different plan for me. Perhaps from the very beginning. Perhaps I was meant to be entrenched, and I'll even go so far as to say enslaved, to a completely controlling and dominating belief system that structured my everything, my entire way of life, my beliefs. I had been taught to believe that I was separate from the source of all life that we called God, that I was born depraved as a sinner, and that my only way of getting back to God was to accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, and that my hope, therefore, was to somehow avoid committing the unforgivable sin, which no one ever told me what that was. So you're always kind of living in fear that you might commit the unforgivable sin and accidentally, oops, landing up in hell, the place of conscious eternal torment after you die. And I'm telling you, having that hang over your head for your entire life, that fear of ultimate, unending, eternal punishment, that'll help keep a girl in line through some pretty difficult parts of her life. So that was my construct. I was also taught that my emotions were not to be trusted, my thoughts were not to be trusted, that to have too many questions was to have doubts, which was to be in rebellion against authority. I was taught that having a body, flesh, as they called it, was evil, wrong, and I had spirituality up on this unattainable pedestal. Meanwhile, I had sexuality shoved down into the proverbial gutter, and never the twain should meet. They were as far as from east to west, totally separate. One was sacred and the other was profane. As a result, I was frigid, rabidly frigid, as in I hated sex with every fiber of my being. Yeah, really, absolutely. No exaggeration, no hyperbole here. So how that worked, because at the time of this experience, I had 7 of my 8 children already born, and they were born completely outside of any sort of sexual desire, passion, had never had an orgasm, didn't like sex at all. So I would avoid it like the plague, literally. I wouldn't want to hug or kiss or sleep in the same bed, because any of that could lead to doing the nasty, you know, the thing we had to do to to procreate, to make more little Christians, because that was easier apparently than evangelizing and knocking door to door to introduce people to Jesus. Yeah, God, looking back on it all now. So I hated sex. I avoided it. I was totally asexual. When I would be cornered, proverbially speaking, I was never literally cornered, but when the coercion to give in to the need, the requirement for sexual gratification of my then husband, I would give in, but it was like this. It was fists clenched, face rigid, teeth gritted, trying to not let my lip curl or my eyes roll. I would allow no foreplay, no afterplay. It was get it over with. And I would fantasize about unloading the dishwasher to get through it. It was that bad. It was bad for me. It was bad for him. But obviously, I kept giving in because, you know, we had those 7 children. Oh, and it's also more than all of that, more than just hating and avoiding sex. I was on birth control for several of the children. Avoiding sex, birth control. Oh, yes. Well, I had bulimia from the age of 18 until 39. So my weight was low enough, my body fat was low enough that I couldn't even menstruate, much less ovulate, much less get pregnant, much less have a baby, much less have big, healthy babies. And I kept having big, healthy babies every roughly 2 years, between 7.5 and 9 pounders. And I was like 98 pounds soaking wet when I wasn't pregnant. Evidently, I was born to breed them and feed them, because that's what kept happening. So that's kind of all background set up for this experience that radicalized my everything. So picture with me, if you will, the year 2004. It's Monday, May 24th at 3:45 p.m. And I know what time it was because I happened to glance at the car clock. I was sitting in my car in a church parking lot nestled into the woods in Vienna, Virginia. I was waiting for my eldest son's drum lesson to finish, and I was wondering when it might be over, so I glanced at the clock, and I was looking around. I was not thinking sexual thoughts because I never thought sexual thoughts, and I mean that. I was looking into the woods, and I was noticing the beautiful dappling of the white dogwood blossoms nestled in the trees and how they kind of glowed in the dim shadows. And I was thinking about that and the fact that this late in May, it wasn't yet sticky, hot, humid, and just kind of marveling at all of that when all of a sudden, bam, I was struck with energy out of nowhere, the proverbial blue. It started in my hips, my groin, my I don't know what, somewhere down there. I didn't think about down there, but it started down there and it shot up through my head and back down and back up and back down, and then it went through my arms and legs, and I was reverberating, glowing, tingling, shaking, quivering with this energy that I didn't understand. I was excited and terrified at the same time. I was confused. I was elated. I was awestruck with whatever this thing was. I didn't know what it was. Now, I'd been around charismatic church services where people get slain in the spirit and weird things happen. And I was familiar with the miraculous, the strange, the inexplicable happening, but not to me. I was like always the last one standing in the room when everybody else was slain in the spirit. And I'm standing there wondering, is something wrong with me? Was I born without a soul, or are they all faking it and perversely proud and horrified at the same time? But I'm the only one upright. So I was used to that kind of thing. But this, I didn't know what this was. It was delicious. It was incredible. But it's like all of a sudden, I knew what all of the love songs were about and all of the sexual innuendos. And I knew what the movies were about and the books. And it was like, oh my God, I get it. Because I was feeling sexual desire for the first time, not for anyone, not toward anything, just in me, like I was supposed to have this. And I previously had thought I wasn't. So I'm feeling all of this excitement and terror and deliciousness. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is too good to be true. This has to be immoral and unethical and maybe illegal. And I'm going to have to confess it. But first, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm thinking all of that in like a downloaded nanosecond. And all of a sudden, I don't know how I knew. I do not know how I knew, but all of a sudden I knew that this spirituality that I had up on the pedestal and this sexuality that I had down in the gutter, these two energies had gone together like this. And I knew that I knew that I knew that these were the flip sides of the same coin, that they were both sacred and they were both profane. I don't know how I knew, but I knew. Meanwhile, I called my then husband and I said, so when can you be home? And he, thinking that perhaps something was wrong with me or one of the kids, says, are you okay? Are the kids okay? And I said, yes, we're fine. I'm fine. I'll be home. I'll be in the bedroom. I'll be naked. Okay. You have to understand, 16 years of being sexually refused by me, he's probably thinking, okay, maybe the aliens got her, maybe her body is possessed, but as long as she looks like my wife, I can get away with this. So my son comes out. I don't say anything to him. He's 16. I know what to not say to whom, right? I get me home. I go upstairs, and sure enough, I'm waiting, and he comes up, and I don't appear to have aliens possessing my body. So we indulge. And afterwards, I'm thinking, wow, my body can do this, can enjoy this. I was awestruck. I finally got it. I finally got it. After all those years of enduring, I finally got to enjoy. And then I said, let's do it again. And the poor man, yeah, I'd wake him up first thing in the morning. I'd beg him to come home for lunch. As soon as he walked in the door, I'd grab his tie and I'm dragging him upstairs and tossing VeggieTales to the kids and saying, we'll be down in 3 episodes and then I'll fix dinner. Waking him up in the middle of the night and then again before he takes off for work in the morning. I mean, I was insatiable because, you see, even though I was really enjoying this, I hadn't yet learned how to have a climax. I'd never had an orgasm and I didn't know how to get there. So it was like really exciting and really frustrating all at the same time. So on about day 4 of this huge cataclysmic change in my life, I'm in the bathroom reading the Bible because that's what you do when you're a Christian. You read your Bible every day. And if you're a mother of many children and you need privacy, you go in the bathroom. to do this. So I'm in the bathroom, and I've got the Bible open with all my devotional books, and I'm trying to pray, and I'm trying to read the Bible, and all I can think about is, when is he gonna get home? And so I say to the God that I still believed in at the time, all right, you did this to me. What am I supposed to do now? I can't concentrate. I can't focus on praying. I can't read the Bible. I can hardly clean house. I can't function. What am I supposed to do? And I have the thought, aha, book 22, the 22nd book of the Bible, kind of right in the middle, is a book called Song of Solomon, or Song of Songs. It's supposedly written by Solomon. God, blanked out for a second there. Written by Solomon as a tribute to his beloved, the Shulamite woman. And it's all about them having sex but it's got euphemisms, right? The English is so watered down with euphemisms, but I'd heard that in the original Hebrew version, it was so spicy, so salacious, that a Jewish man had to be married and over the age of 30 before he was allowed to read the thing. So I'm thinking, I want to read the thing, but I need to get a version that's, you know, translated from original Hebrew to English so I can get to all of the really cool meanings of the euphemisms, because I have to read the Bible and it needs to be erotic. I have a problem, a conundrum. So I go to the computer. This is before Google, but you know, we could still search back in the olden days of the deep boxy computers. And I type in something like Hebrew to English version of the Song of Solomon, and I wait. And what comes up is a website. It's a website, and it says it's called The Marriage Bed, and it's for married Christian couples to be able to talk about sex from a biblical and scientifically accurate perspective. Now, I'm a little horrified. I'm a little concerned. I'm a little excited because they're talking about God and sex on the same website, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how awful. I have to watch this. I have to see what it's about. So I enter the website and I devour all the articles, and I'm reading them and I'm going, oh, wow. The divine, God, as I called it then, did this to me. I'm supposed to feel all this. This is good. This is my birthright. I've been deprived and depriving myself of one of the most incredible experiences on planet Earth in a human body. I'm excited. So I read all of the articles. I go and find the discussion forum. So there's all these people, all these Christian married couples talking about sex in a very open, frank, but non-titillating way. Because one of the rules here is that you're not supposed to make people think about having sex with you. You're supposed to talk about your experience, ask your questions, and inspire them to enjoy sex with their spouse. So all of that was above board. And that's a fine line to navigate, but I discovered that all I had to do was be me, and I could navigate it pretty well. So I share my testimony. I tell them how bad it was, how good it got, what happened in the middle. I called it the miracle. I didn't know what else to call it, but because, you know, it felt pretty dang miraculous to me. And I started posting about all of the different things I was experiencing, the joy, the excitement, the liberation, the feeling of, yes, I finally get it. And I became a very popular girl overnight. I had the men, the husbands who had frigid wives coming to me and saying, okay, all right, I want you to pray for my wife. Whatever it is you got, I want my wife to have it too. So if you have something to sell, if you have a technique, if you can pray for her or whatever, I want my wife to have whatever hit you. And I had the women coming to me going, I'll have what she's having. Yeah, it was like that. So I was posting, this was my day. As soon as my ex-husband went to work, I'm on the computer and I'm typing and I'm having so much fun and I'm making so many friends, and it was wonderful. And of course, once he got home, I was offline and on elsewise. That was my life. Of course, I was also homeschooling my children. They were getting an education. They were also getting an education, quite frankly, in what can happen when mommy and daddy are showing a lot of affection and clearly enjoying themselves and each other. This almost could have saved the marriage. It certainly looked like it at the time. Definitely looked like it at the time. So here I am on the marriage bed talking about how exciting life had become. And I mean, literally everything in my life was supercharged. It was like going from black and white Kansas to Technicolor Oz. Everything was vibrating with color and intensity. It's like sexuality permeated my everything. So I had this energy of spirituality and this energy of sexuality, and they were dancing and playing and commingling and filling me up with joy and exuberance and vibrancy. I was alive, so alive. The world was a shiny, shiny place. Yeah. So the only problem was, as I mentioned a little while ago, I was enjoying this gift of my newfound sexuality, but I was not I was not getting satiated because I hadn't figured out how to have an orgasm. And I kept thinking, well, maybe I have. So I went on the marriage bed one day and I wrote I wrote a post about how I was working on this, and I was thinking maybe I might have had one that one time that felt a little bit different. And one of the women there on the website said, honey, if you don't know you had one, you haven't had one. Go figure out how to have one. So I'm on a mission now, how to have one. And the owner of the website wrote to me privately. Now it's pretty cool when you've got tens of thousands of people on this website and you get picked by the owner to have a private conversation. So he writes to me and he says, look, as I understand it, you've gone and had 7 big babies. And what happens when you have 7 big babies, your PC muscle, the pubococcus muscle, gets blown out of smithereens. It's been sidelined. Now, the pubococcus muscle, let's see if I can sit better. It's a muscle that goes from the pubic bone all the way back through the pelvic bowl, and like a hammock, it holds and supports the internal organs. In particular, for a woman, it would be her vagina, her uterus, the rectum, the labia, the clitoris, all the internal and external female genitalia, her sexual organs. And for a woman to have an orgasm, it begins in her uterus, but the pubococcus muscle also needs to be finely tuned. So think of guitar strings or violin strings. They need to be taut. They need to be tight so that, and they need to be taut, the other kind of taut, so that the woman can have an orgasm. And because I'd had all these big babies, mine had been compromised, train wrecked. So, as this gentleman was telling me, I needed a crutch because I was kind of crippled. And in my case, a crutch looked like a vibrator. So, okay, I have my marching orders. I need to find me a vibrator. Now, when you've been raised in Christian circles and sex is a new thing to you, you don't just know where to go to find a vibrator. And I suppose I could have ordered one online, but I was a little impatient. I wanted to resolve this no orgasm issue. So I look up in the yellow pages back when, yellow pages were the thing. There was a town, one town over, Chantilly, Virginia, for any of you who happen to know or care about that. And there was a shop called the Nice But Naughty Shop, and they had vibrators. So I get in my 15-passenger van, which is what you drive when you have umpteen children, and I drive to the next town, and I pull into the lot, and then I have the dilemma of, okay, so did I pull all the way in so that the back end of my van that is covered with all of the Christian bumper stickers is facing the street and perhaps alerting people who know me and my van that I'm in this place of ill repute, or do I back it in, which is really hard to do when you're like the size of an average 12-year-old and you're that, yeah, anyway, so I had to just pull in and take a chance that I wasn't going to get caught. And really, I was kind of thinking, I don't care, I'm on a mission. So I walk in the front door, and jingle, 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 you know, the bell at the top, which makes people look at me. And the only people in the store was one. It was the woman behind the counter, and she looked like a little grandmother. I was kind of surprised to discover this. I don't know what I was expecting. Someone, I don't know, different. So I go walking around the store. I let her know, I'm good. I'm good. I want to be on my own here. I don't want help. I walk over to this one section. I don't know what it is at the time. There's lots of handcuffs and paddles and whips and things, and I didn't know then about S&M. So I was mildly intrigued, but I kept going because I wasn't there for that. And I go to the back, and there's this lovely selection of realistic life-size dildos on the wall. And I'm looking at them, and it's like, no, these are a little too realistic. I don't need veins and faux pubic fur for my first ever vibrator. So I bypass all that, and I think, I need help. So I go to the counter. There's a glass case that happens to be filled with a lovely assortment of vibrators, multiple colors, quite lovely. And I say to the woman behind the counter, I need some help. And she said, all right, honey, how can I help you? She had a lovely Southern draw. And I came out with this story, and it came out something like this. Well, you see, I'm new at this whole sex thing, and I have never had an orgasm before, and I just discovered that I really like sex because Jesus made me like sex, and I don't know what happened, but I was sitting in the car, and then this thing happened, and so now I like sex, but I keep having sex, and I don't have an orgasm, and I need to get a vibrator because they told me that because I had so many babies, like 7 babies, I need to come in here and get a crutch, and the crutch is a vibrator, and I need to find one, and I can't find which one I want, and can you help me? She looks at me, and she blinks. And then she gets on the intercom to the back room, and she goes, Betty, you need to get out here and hear this. So Betty enters from the back room, and Betty looks like the kind of woman I would have expected behind the counter when I walked in. She's, I don't know, like 6 foot tall with her 6 or 7 inch stiletto heels. She's got fishnet stockings and a black leather mini skirt and a too tight, too low leopard print tank top, and she's got big hoop earrings. I'm wearing big hoop earrings, and she's got beehive hairdo and like electric blue glittery eyeshadow and eyeliner out here and pink bubblegum colored lipstick. And she comes out and she leans on the counter and she says, yeah, what you got? And so I have to tell her my story too. Now they're both staring at me, blinking. I know they've never heard anything like this. And after a moment of pause, they get busy with the assortment of vibrators. And they're pulling out this one and that one, and they're handing to me to try out. Well, I mean, I tried it out by holding it in my hand. I didn't try it out, like, you know, yeah. So I would hold it in my hand and get a feel, okay, all right, maybe like this. So I'm weighing all my options and chatting and having a lovely time with the grandma lady and Betty, when all of a sudden I hear the door ding again. Otherwise, I'm the only person in here. And I glance over and I see a guy. I don't know if he's a truck driver or a biker dude, but he's like in all black leather, and he sees me and he starts sauntering over to the case, and he's listening in. And the case next to me is filled with, I didn't know what they were then, but now I know they were fleshlights. He's looking at those, and he keeps inching closer to me. And all of a sudden, I realize that my safety bubble when I'm in a sex shop is definitively larger than my safety bubble when I'm in a Walmart. And I turn to him and I say, back off, buddy. So he backs off. And I go on chatting with Betty and grandma lady. And finally, we mutually conclude that I should go home with this lovely phallic-shaped, bright pink, day glow pink, kind of with sparkles, very attractive sparkles embedded into the silicone, and a few other accoutrements. And it was we bonded. I looked at this and I said, this is Mr. Pinky, and we shall be friends. We bonded differently later, but in the shop we bonded, you know, kind of love at first sight kind of thing. and they tell me that they don't have batteries. I need to go across the street to Rite Aid to get the batteries. So I thanked them. I hugged them. You know, we'd also bonded. And I go get the batteries, and I get in my 15-passenger van, and I'm driving down the highway, the 2-lane highway, and I'm stopping at lights. And there's lots of lights, and there's a really long light at one point. So I'm at this really long light, and I take Mr. Pinky out of the bag, and I look at him, and I put the batteries in because I just want to see, you know, how that part works. And I'm wearing a mini skirt, a jean skirt, and I'm thinking, well, you know, I could give it a test run on the way home. I mean, you know, I'm just driving, and I think to myself, I should look to the, and I look through the window on the passenger side, and I see a trucker like looking down at me, and he's looking a little too interested at what I'm about to do with Mr. Pinky. So I put Mr. Pinky into the bag, and I put my foot on the gas pedal, and I floor it, and I take off and drive all the way home without further incident, which is probably a good thing. And I get home, and I toss a few VeggieTales at my children, and I say, Mama is going to be upstairs in her prayer room, which is what I called the room, and it pretty much got a new name for a room after this particular incident, but it was still the prayer room at that moment. And now my oldest was then 16, and I had a 14-year-old daughter and younger ones. It's not like I left a whole bunch of toddlers home. And yeah, so they were good with me being out and going up. So yeah, so I go up, and I sit in the chair. Used to be called the Bible study chair. It is no longer the Bible study chair. I sit in the chair, and it occurs to me, I'm 42 years of age, and I have never seen my own genitals. Never. I'd had all kinds of exams. I'd given birth 7 times. Lots of other people had seen them because, you know, when you're giving birth, you don't care who's looking. You just get the baby out. Yeah, it's not, you don't care. But suddenly I cared because I wanted to know what I looked like. Now, for men, obviously, men, your genitals are you know, they're just right out there, and there's no like, I don't know what I look like. In your world, no, of course you know, you've known your whole life. For women, it's a little more round the corner, and yeah, so, and I had avoided everything sexual, so this was new to me, but I decided I was going to give myself a guided tour. So I got the hand mirror, and I sat down, and I looked at the mirror, and I got to tell you, the first thing that came to mind, and yeah, I was a Christian, and so of course a Bible verse would come to mind, but the verse about being fearfully and wonderfully made rose to my mind, and I was astonished at just how amazing a creation and a design the human body can be. I was in awe. It was reverential awe. Yeah, and I suddenly knew why Georgia O'Keeffe had painted all of those orchids, and why there was the connotation. It was an amazing moment. And then I decided to acquaint myself with Mr. Pinky, and I'll spare you the details. Let's just say I discovered how to have an orgasm. 9 orgasms later, I came downstairs and told the children that they didn't have to watch any more VeggieTales and that I could fix dinner. And Mama was happy fixing dinner that night. Yeah. Oh goodness. And there's so much more to the story, of course. So much more. I may actually leave that for a part 2, because there's a definite repercussion for what happened as a result of me discovering that the divine intended for me to be fully sexually alive, without shame, without embarrassment, without apology, because I had been rendered thus. And I knew it was real, and I knew it was true, and I knew it was the most sacred thing I had ever experienced. So in my next installment of the story, part 2 of the Great Kundalini experiment or experience, I'm going to tell you all about how this miraculous experience actually ended up getting me and the rest of my family catapulted out, as in internationally excommunicated from and locally shunned by everyone we knew. So stay tuned for the rest of the story. Thanks for listening.